This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
Long night.
You ready?
Yep.
Start time last night, 6:40 p.m. A full house, standing room only in council chambers. Why? Well, we'll tell you in a second. There were a lot of topics last night that completely got overshadowed this morning because of time. I only have so much time, and I'm sure you don't want to listen to me complain any more than I usually do. But in a nutshell, I am not sure how many more times this council is setting up administration to say, "I told you so" to them. Once again, more recommendations provided by experts and committees that are thrown in the garbage by this council, who seem to think they're the smartest people in the room. I'm here to tell you, especially after last night, they are most definitely not. The process to review the composition of the Thunder Bay City Council began in 2019, 6 years ago, when a motion regarding composition was initially deferred, and then it came back in September of 2020. Resolution was passed requesting administration undertake the necessary work to develop a public consultation process and a committee regarding potentially decreasing the size of City Council. On November 23rd, 2020, in a committee of the whole meeting, a recommendation was presented to move forward on this work, and the work began to reimagine the makeup of our City Council. A group of experienced and passionate people joined a committee to look at every inch of the community with piles of research and hours of hard work. And in September of 2024, Committee of the Whole and the committee in front of the committee chair, Rebecca Johnson, provided an update to council members on the completion of Phase 1 of the project, detailing the work completed by the Council Composition Review Committee, outlining the committee's upcoming steps. They broke it into wards. They came up with all kinds of suggestions. It was sent back to them by council, and then last night the final report was brought forward. A report technically 5 years in the making. On March 3rd, the first presentation was presented to council, and they kicked it back for more engagement. They wanted more information. The proposed changes would see a reduction of councillors from 13 to 11, resulting in an 11-member council consisting of a mayor, 2 at-large councillors, and 8 councillors representing 4 newly designed wards. These new ward boundaries running east to west aim to create more equitable population, income levels, and demographics, encompassing both urban, residential, and industrial areas of the city. The shift to this hybrid was going to enhance representation by maintaining neighborhood connections through ward councillors while incorporating citywide perspectives from at-large members. It was a huge undertaking. The recommendations in last night's report followed extensive public consultation over 2 phases, considering of mapping options, the input from experts. The committee also highlighted the importance of exploring ways to increase Indigenous representation on City Council. They did it all. So what happened? Well, the best way to describe the start of that conversation is this. Andrew Folds was first. He fired up a Caterpillar D10 bulldozer and drove it straight through City Council chambers. That's the best way to describe it. I know that might sound dramatic, but that's what happened. Before even a conversation about the final report, Councillor Folds put a motion forward to kill the project dead on the spot, before there was even a discussion. And with that amendment, send it back to administration to start looking at ward boundaries again. Again, imagine the work that went into the boundaries, calculating precise data of who lives where, how much they make, their cultural affiliation, literally every detail to come up with balanced wards or equal rural and urban sections, all of it attached to the water, east to west. Imagine the work they did. And here comes Folds, a motion to defeat the report even before discussing it. Why? Well, because he wanted to review existing ward boundaries, but not now, after the 2026 election and in time for 2030. What? Councillor Folds says he thinks the current system is working. He says he doesn't think it's broken. If that's the case, why on earth did you and your colleagues even approve the creation of this committee in the first place? Why did you agree to the exercise if you think it's working? 5 years of work for you to say, yeah, it's working just fine after the fact. And away we went for the next 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. Round and round we went with counselors who obviously did not read the report or forgot they even asked for this report. It was clear who was worried about their job. At one point, Councillor Pascalino suggested that he was completely offended by the notion that people in council don't want this change because they want to ensure a seat in city council. Well, ironically, Councillor, the two councillors who were strongly against the change were the two councillors who have been there the longest, who have won countless times in landslides, Councillor Gertuga and Councillor Folds. I'll let you process that for a second. Of course they're concerned because the competition with this new boundary and with these new wards just got 10 times harder if it was approved. But here's the biggest point from Councillor Folds. And then, of course, a couple others jumped in the pool with him. Are you ready for this? What about our identity? Here's what he means. When you're from Current River, you tell people that and you're proud of it. When you're from Westfort, it's the same. You're proud to be from Westfort. Those happen to be the names of the wards. But if we change that, people will lose their identity. Really? That's the best you've got? News flash, councillors, two cities amalgamated in 1970. Yeah. A vast majority of the population still says they're from Fort William or Port Arthur. 60 years later, we're doing just fine, thank you very much. And with this change, you're still allowed to say you're from Westfort or Current River. Everyone will say where they're from. It's been 60 years and we're still doing it.
You wouldn't say, like, if this were to have followed through, you wouldn't be saying, hey, yeah, I live in Ward 1.
Where did you grow up? Ward 4? Oh.
Sorry.
Come on.
Oh, wow.
So 2 hours into the discussion, Councillor Mark Bentz drops a bombshell and puts forward an amendment to change the recommendations of the Composition Committee. You know, the committee of volunteers who have put in years of work. Councillor Bentz suggested we don't need two councillors in these new wards. How about we just have one and switch all the other ones to at-large? Well, the wards, as designed by this very smart expert committee, has between 30 and 40,000 people in each ward. It isn't enough to be represented by one person. But the amendment went to the floor anyway. And for another hour, it finally went to vote. And your council voted 5-7 to defeat Bentz's resolution. His resolution, still 11 members, 1 per ward, 6 at large, and a mayor. That was it. Dead. It goes back to the main motion on the floor. And Folds' original motion to defeat the report and send it back to administration to look at ward boundaries again, essentially starting over. That lost to 5-7. See how close? That was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And so to the report from the Composition Committee, the report that this council and the councils before asked for, the report that went back for research twice was defeated. This time, only Councillor Oliver and Mayor Boschkoff were in favor. It lost 10-2. Years of work for nothing. Literally for nothing.
So some of the words that I heard being tossed around last night, so now it's like status quo?
Nothing is changing.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing
All
is
of that
changing.
work, nothing has changed.
Everything is the same.
So close the chapter on this?
Pretend it didn't happen. Thank you to the committee for all of your work and dedication. And this city council wonders why people are not putting their hand up to help. Because this is what happens when you do. The next topic, if that first one wasn't enough, keeping in mind we're already 3 hours into the meeting and we're on the second topic. The Thunder Bay City Council considers the site for the temporary village. Last night, council was presented with a new site for the temporary village for the homeless at 1111 Fort William Road. It's the lot across from the CLE, currently owned by the Lakehead Region Conservation Authority. The report highlights this location was the most viable option, and after previous attempts to identify suitable municipally owned land, they were unsuccessful. The recommendation comes after council directed administration to revisit the site selection in November. Remember that fight? We don't want it on Miles Street. Pick another one. Get back to work. And that's what they did. The proposed site received a 71% ranking based on the established site selection criteria and is considered to balance the safety and well-being of future residents and the wider community. The city, by the way, has secured $2.8 million in funding for the project, contingent on it meeting strict construction deadlines. You don't get the money unless you follow the deadlines. Do you see where we're going here? The urgency of the temporary village initiative is underscored by 2 large fires and encampments over the winter, resulting in serious injury and loss of life, highlighting the dangers faced by individuals experiencing homelessness. The report details a robust assessment of over 50 municipally owned sites and a public consultation process.
There was a lot. I found that list very interesting.
The locations.
Yes, there were sites like Wardrobe Avenue. Onion Lake Road was
deep in the heart, in the middle of Northwood. There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So this group, administration, goes back to work figuring out 50 municipally owned sites and then comes back with this new site on Fort William Road. Now, I want to make something very clear. Your council has already approved the building of this village. It's already approved. The only thing we're looking for is a site. Over an hour into the debate, another hour, Councillor Bentz sent an amendment to council to propose an alternative. He's now suggesting a wooded area on Cumberland Street next to the Salvation Army. Has anybody checked in with the Salvation Army to see what they think? What about the businesses over there? What about the school that's only up the street? What about the homes that are close by? Has anybody done their homework on this? Well, of course, administration has. Not the best location for this. But away we went. He did this without any feedback from the neighborhood or the businesses. I could go on and on about how the councillors went back and forth repeating each other for another hour, but won't bother. I'll say this. It has to be acknowledged that this administration did their homework on this project. They are truly experts. Thank you to Cynthia Olson, Director of Strategy and Engagement, and Riley Willinen, who is the Drug Strategy Specialist and the Encampment Response Plan Lead. They were, in a word, outstanding. The knowledge they brought to not only the report, but having an answer to every single question from council, no matter how ridiculous they were, they handled all of it with poise and grace. They did their homework right down to the distances to every piece of support for the temporary village and more. Thank you to them for their work, all of that work. They are experts and they're there to help people, which every counselor should be in the room to do the same thing. Next thing you know, it's the 11 p.m. resolution, and we're 4 rounds into debate over the suggestion of a new location. At one point during all of this, there was a suggestion of an amendment to the amendment. Thank God that was scrapped. After 4 hours and over 90 minutes, the amendment vote for the Salvation Army site, next to the Salvation Army site, came forward. So after all that work from the committee and all the administrators, 9-2 was the vote from your council to pick the Salvation Army site, but it's not ratified yet. Administration still could come back next week to say, this location doesn't work. There's a lot of problems with that location, one of it being flooding, one of it being the fact that it's full of trees that will all have to come down, and then that spot needs to be prepared. The other is, it's on a bus route, yay, but there isn't a sidewalk. It's the simple things. But this expert team of counselors, 9 of them, who apparently know more than the experts in administration, voted for this new location. It comes back to council next week for ratification.
So this location on Cumberland is this new suggestion, but might not
That's
be the
correct.
end result.
That's correct. This whole discussion may be for nothing.
So we could end up again
And
starting
over again and going back to these experts in administration that are going to say, told you so.
Isn't time of the essence on this
It
too
certainly
as well?
is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
All
And
right.
that was pointed out by the city manager more than once last night. Next thing you know, Danny, it's 11:32 p.m. And guess what comes back?
Oh, the tug?
Oh, no, we're not
hang
even
on.
on the tug yet. A request for a revote on council composition.
don't. Oh, bless your heart. I don't know how you
What?
keep track of this stuff.
Wait, what? I literally was sitting there and staring at the TV going, did I fall asleep for 3 hours? Like, did I? Nope. Counselor Bentz wanted a revote. He felt that maybe some counselors didn't understand that this committee did years of work and that we're throwing it all away and doing nothing. And he thought because they voted the first time and didn't have a chance to reflect on their vote 2.5 hours ago, that we should revote. So they voted again. This time, the mayor chose not to vote. His non-vote means opposed. Once again, council composition lost 5-7, the same result as 2 hours prior. On to the final piece of the puzzle. At 11:38, we started the discussion about everybody's favorite topic, the James Whalen tug. You remember the fights. I got a guy. Remember that?
Yes.
That was from a couple of weeks ago. We don't got a guy this time. This time, guess who showed up? The Lakehead Transportation Museum of Thunder Bay. This is a group of very passionate, hardworking people that are trying to do good for the city. They receive absolutely $0 from the city, but yet they pay lease fees to the city and Port Authority. All they're asking for is, again, they want to keep the upper structure up to the waterline of the tug. The cost, $120,000 to take it and put it on a land-based attraction at the museum. Here's what they're asking for. Can you please lend us $120,000 because we can't get funding because you, the city of Thunder Bay, won't sign our lease. So no one will give us money because we don't have a lease. We'll pay you back the $120,000. And the presentation got at times emotional. One of the members of the Transportation Museum, Dave Muir, actually got choked up trying to save the tug and the top part of the tug. He, of course, was cut off multiple times by the chair. But I need to know this. Where do we, this radio station, sign up to help them raise $120,000? What can we do? We're now re-debating keeping certain components of the tug. Maybe we could take a window. What? Another hour and another motion to save some items up to $20,000 for the Transportation Museum. It lost. Administration strongly suggesting to councils that we are not a bank. The advice from the treasurer, not recommending using a reserve fund to help fund the $120,000. There's projects in 2025 that will get deferred if we use this money. And, oh, by the way, the Transportation Museum has no assets, and so we're really sticking our neck out for $120,000. It's not best practice. It lost 5-7. The award for the tender as presented to scrap the entire tug was passed 10-2. The meeting was done at 12:48. Final thoughts on the James Whalen tug. It has come back countless times. We don't have to rehash what happened, but the Transportation Museum of Thunder Bay has tried desperately to save this boat. Countless times, even before it sunk, and they were ignored. This is hardworking people that care about these items and the history of our community, and they got brushed under the rug for the final time last night. But here's a highlight from last night that I'm not sure is going to make the news, but it got my attention. At one point, when trying to discuss the lease that they don't have on the land at Pool 6, at one point, city administration said, we're not going to talk about this because it might change. Why might that lease change for the Pool 6 museum site? Remember a couple of weeks ago, the big announcements of the Nordic Spa, the hotels
and
condos?
Right.
I got a feeling there's a museum in the way for that. Watch this space. It was a long and difficult meeting, but I'll end it with this, and my apologies for its length. But if I had to sit through 6 hours and 8 minutes of it, it's hard to compress.
That's fair.
This city council, again, twice last night, threw it back at administration, telling them that they know better. Again. And they don't. This dysfunctional council, again with almost a split vote on major issues, have a great deal of difficulty making hard decisions. There was 25 or 30 people in the room opposed to the temporary village going on Fort William Road, and they buckled. At one point, Councillor Fold said, if you don't want to make hard decisions, you shouldn't be running for council. In the meantime, this council, countless times, with recommendations from administration to make difficult decisions, buckled. At one point, we can't spend $120,000. It's not fiscally responsible to save the Tug. Yet we're dropping $52 million on a turf. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
This term of council is a disaster.
I think it's tough on city administration to come into work every day and say, what are we doing here every day?
They're going to be pretty tired this morning, too, aren't they?
Right? Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of work that we asked for. This is the part that people don't understand. Administration's not just doing this stuff. We asked them to do this stuff, and now, again, countless times, we throw it in the garbage.
Everything is challenged. John, that was an extensive one. That was a long night last night, and thank you for your roundup this morning. There's a lot to break down in that one. We are going to have the full recap of this. If you missed it, you want to hear it again or go through it again, we can have you do that. Go to our website, 999thebay.ca, in just a bit for a recap, or text the word council to our T-Bay Tel Talk and text line 807-344-8229.
All three of these items come back next week.
They do. Yeah. John, thanks for the roundup this morning.